to welcome to the second community meeting regarding the temporary housing at Vermont House. My name is Hillary Baroga, and I'm with the County of Santa Clara, and I'll introduce my colleagues and our guests in just a moment. Before we get started, I wanted to let you all know that we are recording tonight's meeting. I'd like to take a minute for a minute of mindfulness. And if you're like many of the people that I have talked to or heard from about this meeting, you might have come here tonight on edge, perhaps a little frustrated, certainly with the timing of notifications or other things. Maybe you're worried that you won't be heard or that you're fearful about what will happen after this meeting. Maybe you wish there weren't so many important events happening on this one night. But I have a very optimistic and strong belief that everyone here believes in goodness and wants to create and live in safe communities, that we want our children and the children of others to be happy and safe, and that we want our most vulnerable and sick neighbors to be cared for. So before we get started, I'd invite you to join me in a mindful minute. We'll take 1 minute to help us transition from one part of our busy day to the next and help us be present. It's not mandatory, so if you don't feel like doing it, that's okay. I just ask that you give others a minute. If you do choose to participate and you're in a safe place, you are welcome to close your eyes, or you can use the video that I'll share in just a moment to guide your breathing. Bring attention to how you're sitting and try to be relaxed and alert at the same time. And give yourself permission to let go of the busy day, become present, and focus on your breathing. As you come back to the meeting, feel free to move your body a little bit, maybe shake out your hands and feet or roll and stretch your shoulders. If you closed your eyes, blink them open slowly. And thanks for taking that minute with us. Again, welcome to tonight's meeting about the temporary housing at the Vermont House, which is located at 1072 and 1082 Vermont Street in San Jose. My name is Hillary Baroga, and I am with the Office of the County Executive. I'm joined tonight by some county colleagues. I'd like to welcome Supervisor Cindy Chavez and her staff. I'd like to also welcome Deputy County Executive Keeley, and from our Behavioral Health Services Department, Gabby Olivares. And from the City of San Jose, I know that we have Eric Sullivan, who is the Director of the Housing Department, and I'm seeing also some other Housing Department staff. And I believe we also have a representative from Councilmember Davis's office with us this evening. So thank you all for joining. I do also want to acknowledge the timing issues we had in our notification that most of you just received our postcard yesterday. And I do sincerely apologize for that error. It turns out that we are competing with timing with election materials in our print shop and mail house. And so we will again work on timing going forward. This is our format for tonight's meeting. So we'll have an informational presentation about the county's planned use. We will have a document of frequently asked questions available, answers to frequently asked questions available online tomorrow afternoon, and we'll put a link to that website in the chat. It's also the same website that appears on your postcard or in the social media posts you may have seen. And then tonight, we have some opportunities for community feedback in the chat. Please use that to post questions that you'd like to ask and that you'd like us to answer during the meeting tonight. And if you have any comments where you're not seeking a response, you're welcome to do that as well. And I'm sorry, I should also note that from Councilmember Davis's office, we have Marianne Brown, our Chief of Staff, and we have Alejandra and Aiden from Mayor Mahan's office here tonight. So thank you for representing the representatives. In addition to the chat function, I'm sorry, it should not say on the slide Q&A function. In addition to the chat function, you can we'll have time at the end for you to raise your hands and speak. Everyone was muted when they joined the meeting tonight. And if you raise your hand, we will ask you to unmute when it's your turn. In order to give the most people an opportunity to speak, we will have a set amount of time to speak depending on the total number of speakers that we have tonight. If we have fewer than 15 people who have raised their hands wanting to speak, we'll give each speaker 2 minutes. 16 to 30 people will have 1 minute. And if we have more than 30 people wanting to speak, we'll give each person 30 seconds. And we will we'll post a timer for you. And we will take as many speakers as possible until the published meeting end time of 8 p.m. The goal for the county's purchase of the Vermont House site is that we want to help people who have mental illness or substance use disorders become as well as they can be. And we know that people's health improves when they have access to stable housing, in particular, their behavioral health. So by giving people a place to stay and stable housing, they have a better chance at effective treatment. Tonight, we are here because the county has made an offer to the city of San Jose to purchase the properties at 1072 and 1082 Vermont Street. And those properties are owned by the city of San Jose. And this proposal continues to support our collective efforts to prevent and end homelessness. So what stays the same? Currently at Vermont House, they are housing unhoused men and women, and we will continue to do that. In addition, that effort will help us continue to reduce unsheltered homelessness and help people who stay obtain permanent housing. But there is a change, and so the program will now prioritize some of our community's most vulnerable members. And those are unhoused homeless men and women whose behavioral health and lack of housing often put them into contact with law enforcement and the justice system. The county's plan is that initially we would use the site for temporary housing. And at Vermont House, we have a goal of getting the site licensed as an adult residential treatment site. We think that licensing process will take about a year. And this is similar to how Vermont House has been used in its history. Um, One of the things we wanted to be sure to share is about people's interaction with the justice system, because it's really, it can be scary to hear. We want to put justice involved people in a home near you. And we want to make sure we're really explaining what that means. And and one of the things to understand about that is that people who have mental illnesses and addictions have chronic diseases. And people with chronic diseases don't always seek or get the help that they need. And when untreated, some behavioral health conditions can increase a person's risk of committing a crime. And when you combine untreated mental illness and or addiction with life situations like lacking food and shelter, that also increases a person's likelihood to interact with law enforcement. So that's what we know about people with behavioral health conditions. We also know that homelessness is often criminalized. Unhoused people get cited for normal human activities, things like sleeping or resting, actively requesting donations, jaywalking, or even just peeing. And those translate to crimes like loitering, vagrancy, and trespassing. We also know that unsheltered people have higher rates of interaction with the police, and that unsheltered people are more likely to be victims of crime, especially violent crimes, than their housed peers. When we say we are serving people who are involved with the justice system, these are some examples of what that means. So they could have had an encounter with law enforcement from a 911 call, or even just an officer driving by and seeing a situation. And that would result in them either being cited and released because the officer determines that they're not, that their interaction isn't arrest level, or not being cited, and the officer would recognize that they need supportive services and may take the time to refer them to those supportive services. They may also work, the law enforcement may work in tandem with one of the county's behavioral health outreach teams and have a direct referral source that way. Somebody who is involved in the justice system could be that they were cited and that they had a date to appear in court, but they missed that court date. And so they were arrested for not appearing in court. They might also be somebody who appears in court for a preliminary hearing after being arrested. And during the preliminary hearing, the judge and the justice partners could determine that the person doesn't need to stay in jail, that they could be released on their own recognizance, and they need a place to stay and could use supportive services to help them. And it could be somebody who's participating in a formal jail diversion program through a collaborative court. If you're not familiar with the collaborative courts, these are places where the court system helps people solve their problems. It could be mental health court. We have veterans court. We have substance use treatment court. We have almost a dozen collaborative courts in Santa Clara County, including intellectually challenged court, or courts for young adults. So people could be participating in a collaborative court and referred to a jail diversion program, a formal jail diversion program, with the consent of that program, the DA, their defense attorney, whether that's a public defender, or and the court itself. And one of the questions that we get most often is, what are the crimes that you're talking about here? Who are these people? Should we be worried about our safety? People who participate in these jail diversion programs, no matter how they're connected, whether it's a referral from law enforcement or participation in a formal jail diversion program, are people who wouldn't who are not facing serious criminal charges like murder, violent sexual crimes like rape or lewd acts against a child, and other crimes that pose a significant threat to public safety. They have to be deemed an it has to be deemed that they're not an unreasonable risk to the community. And there's a penal code reference here, 1001.36, section D has a list of charges a little more specific that would make someone ineligible for formal diversion. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Gabby, to talk to us a little bit more about the types of people we would see in jail diversion programs.
Thank you so much, Hillary. So referrals and screening, this slide is a range of eligible participants that would be able to participate in this program. The blue bar just really encompasses, from the justice perspective, who would be able to make a referral. So you see someone that's had law enforcement interaction, someone that's in the initial court hearing stage, or somebody that has already been granted formal diversion. So in respect to the referral sources, law enforcement would be a police officer in the initial court hearing. It could be a superior court judge, or what we consider our justice partners, which is defense attorney, DA, public defender, alternate defender, defense counsel. And then from our jail diversion program, you know, as Hillary mentioned, it's a problem-solving court. So you have attorneys, you have the court, you have treatment providers that are really trying to find the best approach and how to serve this person as they reintegrate back into community. So in order to participate in these programs, there's certain screening that happens by behavioral health. We do a comprehensive screening where we look at your mental health, your substance abuse. Have you participated in treatment before? Also, law enforcement, you know, does their review. Is this person appropriate? Again, our justice partners, the attorney that's representing this individual, or it's a justice referral, which is judge to judge, contacts a judge and says, you know, I think this person should be screened for behavioral health, or maybe this person's better suited in the collaborative courts based on their severe mental illness or their substance abuse. And, you know, any superior court judge can make a referral to us. So in terms of law enforcement, what really they want to look at is this person really appropriate for outpatient? You know, their needs in terms of services. They were not arrested. You know, their interaction with law enforcement did not cause for this person to be arrested. For our court and our justice partners, again, they want to look at, is this person appropriate to participate in outpatient treatment? Is the public defender or is their attorney recommending that this person participate in treatment in lieu of, you know, having further arrest or landing in our county jail? And does the district attorney agree that this person does not pose public safety and this person would be appropriate to participate? Then we have our collaborative court process, again, problem solving, where we have many individuals that are vested in the care of this individual, want this individual to succeed, and there is very close monitoring. So again, is this person appropriate? Did they opt in? Are they willing to participate in treatment? The public defender, the DA have reviewed and approved what we call is our level of care determination. Here's what we're saying this person is appropriate. Here's where they should be placed. And, you know, throughout the different types of outpatient facilities that we operate through Santa Clara County. And we really feel that this person would not be deemed unreasonable risk to community. We really feel it's a safe placement for them. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to describe some of the services that will be provided at this facility. You know, you have treatment providers there, you have housing providers that are really working in the best interest to support this client. So what would be offered is temporary housing. Housing people while they work together, the long-term goals, we're estimating that people will be there 12 to 18 months because we really want them to exit out to long-term housing. Housing navigation to support housing, identifying their needs and what are opportunities to develop a comprehensive housing plan, helping people identify and secure housing. We want to make sure that they have their basic needs met. They have meals, toiletries, referrals to the clothes closet, transportation, support, and on-site security. And from a treatment perspective, in terms of an outpatient setting, we're providing case management, planned counseling, therapy, medication support, crisis intervention, recovery services. Part of participation means that you're engaged in treatment. You're participating in not just your own personal therapy, but you're participating in group counseling. And there's such topics that will be covered like coping strategy, resiliency, emotional regulation. Everything that we utilize is evidence-based. We know it's proven to work with this population. And other support services, referrals to employment assistance, community building activities. We want to make sure that people have meaningful activities, whether that includes work, volunteer, or school. We have many people that are ready to participate and go back to maybe get their high school education or their college education. So that's just some of the services, an array of services that we would be providing. Thank you. And I'm going to direct it back over to you, Hillary.
Thanks, Gabby. We will take any comments or questions from the public now. So if you do want to ask a question or make a comment, if you could raise your hand. I do have a few questions and notes that were sent ahead of time. So one of the things that if you don't know about Vermont House now, the current use or the most recent use has been housing for veterans who have HUD-VASH vouchers. So that means that the veteran was homeless and has a disability. And so people could use that voucher at Vermont House. One of the challenges that the operators in the city faced was that Vermont House is shared housing, and the HUD-VASH vouchers give people choice in their housing. And so many people chose to identify their own apartment versus a shared housing situation. And so Vermont House was going underutilized. And we know that we have a housing crisis in the community. And so this is an opportunity to more effectively utilize Vermont House. But one of the things that was really important to the city and especially Councilmember Davis was that we not lose the opportunity for veterans to be housed. So one of the things that we have agreed to is that we will be prioritizing veterans who qualify for the services the county will provide for the spots at Vermont House. To continue the questions that are coming through in the chat about veterans, there are 4 that have been there recently. 2 have already identified relocation plans. And the other 2, I've been told, have identified relocation plans, but are still at Vermont House. So it is our intention that each of those veterans would be in new housing by the time if the county were to acquire the property. And another question that was asked, people sent ahead of time, was that does the county operate any similar sites with a justice involved population? And so I'm going to turn it over to a couple of folks who are here. So Sarah Bravo is with one of our uh, county contracted behavioral health providers, Community Solutions. And Community Solutions works with our forensic diversion and reintegration services and runs transitional housing or temporary housing for the same population that we would be serving here. And then when Sarah is done with her couple minutes of describing the work that they do, Sarah, I think people are curious about, do we run other sites? Have we encountered any problems? And if there are problems, how have we dealt with them? And then Gabby can talk a couple minutes about our Evans Lane site. Sarah?
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. So Community Solutions is a nonprofit organization here in Santa Clara County, and we do operate THUs or transitional housing units throughout Santa Clara County. We have them in San Jose, Morgan Hill, and in Gilroy. And so we are supporting a significant number of individuals through the Behavioral Health Services Department diversion programs, clients coming out of the justice system, and really supporting them and reintegrating into the community. So all of these individuals are receiving supportive services from our intensive programs in our forensic diversion and reintegration services. Lots of buzzwords here in the county, but really what that is these diversion programs. And so they're receiving intensive mental health services, including case management services, what we'd call rehabilitation or skill building services, as well as therapy individually and in group settings, and really just individualized treatment to ensure that their mental health or potentially co-occurring substance use needs are being addressed and supported. And so they have the support of their primary team within the program itself, as well as the support within the transitional housing unit. So we do have a house monitor in all of our THUs that's there on site and lives at the site. And so they're present overnight. They're able to support the residents throughout the day, looking at kind of what are the plans for the day, making sure that they're sort of following house rules, or if there's any issues coming up that they can address them with them individually. And they are really just that day-to-day presence. We also have what we call a program coordinator, who is one of our staff who is working with the THUs, and they will work with a few different sites generally in the same geographic area. So we might have someone assigned to a few of the houses in San Jose or a few in Gilroy, so that they're able to be a consistent presence on site. They might work with the clients, connecting them to different resources in the community, taking them to an AA group or an NA group, or those type of natural supports that are really beneficial beyond just the formalized mental health services that they're receiving within the agency. And so they're also able to just be eyes on site, see what's going on, if there are any needs, if they're working with the residents together or individually. And the other layer that we have in place is also our facilities department, who is making sure that the houses themselves are in really good condition, because we want to make sure that we're looking like any other neighbor would be, and really providing an appropriate setting for our clients. So if there were any issues coming up with plumbing or flooring, or something happened in the front yard, a bed needs replaced, whatever the pieces might be, that would be their role to ensure that we are holding all of those houses to a high standard. So we do have facilities people, and the majority of our multi-person facilities team, they're just out there all the time. A lot of their time is spent just ensuring that things are kept up to that standard. So, you know, we always make sure we're meeting the HUD requirements for the housing, but also just a regular standard. We know that these are houses, these are neighborhoods, and we want to ensure that our clients are also able to live in a place that's really comfortable and appropriate for them. So we have a high level of support. We have a manager that's supporting our THUs. We have our director, myself as the senior director, and really our whole agency and clinical team that's addressing both the behavioral health needs and also ensuring that this housing is successful for them, because ultimately we're trying to get people transitioned short-term here and then really into the community and being able to just live as regular citizens. That's ultimately our goal. We do also, I know
one more quick thing.
One big thing I was just going to say, I know one question that came up in a previous meeting was about communication with court, or if issues are arising. We do stay in communication with probation or parole officers. So we have a monthly report that we send to them, treatment updates, status updates, any concerns or needs. And if there are any sort of crisis or issue, we have on-call support, and we also would be communicating any changes or concerns to their probation officer. We are their mental health team, but we also are responsible to ensure that, we are reporting any issues to the court. And ultimately, if that means that a client needed to get remanded or things like that, we want to make sure we're partnering with probation, because ultimately we want to keep everyone safe.
Thanks, Sarah. And Gabby, before you jump in, I want to say one thing and then take a question from the community. In addition to all that Sarah shared, if the county was to acquire Vermont House, we would establish a community advisory committee for the site. So we would meet with the neighborhood and the site operator regularly, and that would be a place where the neighborhood could address any concerns or issues or things like that. And we would have a point of contact at both the county and with the site operator where the neighborhood could reach out in the meantime. I am going to have Judy answer a question or ask her question now. Judy, let me ask you to unmute one second. There.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. My name is Judy Ciesla. I'm a resident on Morse Street, so I'm probably about 500 feet as the crow flies from the Vermont House, and I'm also president of the Alameda Park Neighborhood Association. I have two questions. I'll start with the first one, and then I'll read the second one. So the first one is the Board of Supervisors Resolution 2024-80 states that with regards to child impact and senior impact, that, quote, the recommended action will have no /neutral impact on seniors or children or youth. I would like to know how that was determined and what data supports that. And then secondarily, I'd like to make the following comment. The $8 million CHFA, or California Health Facilities Finance Authority grant that would be used to purchase these properties and run these programs has a, quote, statutory deadline that is being used as the excuse or the rationale for why this is being fast-tracked, and hence community outreach is being rushed and, in my opinion, compromised. If this statutory deadline isn't met, these CHFA funds will likely be available in its next grant cycle. In the interest of public trust, transparency, and input/involvement, the county and city, in my opinion, needs to return to the drawing board and properly engage the public in this process. If there isn't time to do this in the current grant cycle, then it must wait until the next grant cycle. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. I'll start with your second question regarding the CHFA funds. It is our understanding from the staff at CHFA that if these funds are not spent and there's no additional legislation that the state passes to extend the program, then per statute, the grants would be returned to the Treasury and not reissued for this purpose. Key, I'm wondering if you would respond to the question about impact to children and youth, because
And seniors.
and seniors.
Sure. Hey, everybody, this is Key with the County of Santa Clara. When we prepare that report, the impact statement is really about how that program and that target population is being affected. Here for Vermont House, we believe there's actually a positive impact for adults and individuals, but because we're not really serving youth and families at that particular site, that That's why we indicated that there was no or neutral impact. Of course, I understand that, you know, individuals here, you know, may be concerned about the impact of the neighborhood and sort of the individuals and families living around there.
Thanks, Keith. I see Stephanie. Your hand is next, and I've asked you to unmute.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to Judy for bringing up the CHAFA funds, because that is a huge concern to me. I realize that this opportunity first became available, or it was talked about at the county supervisor level in the spring. I believe in the last call, it was in March, and we were not made aware of it. And in fact, it was only the homes that were within 1,500 feet radius of the Vermont Street houses until, well, the meeting was 8/14, and I believe that the postcards were received within 4 or 5 days before that. And thankfully, we had some people in District 10 and some council members that were realizing that this was very fast and unfair to the residents of San Jose without properly vetting it. And now here we are again, and it's all being fast tracked because the grant money is potentially going to run out, and it potentially will not be returned. Honestly, this frankly isn't the residents' problem. What our problem is that this is trying to be rushed because of the county's agenda. And many of the residents don't feel that this is a good fit for our community, nor have we been given the proper amount of time and vetting to be able to make that determination. And I do believe that the District 10 residents around the one on Monterey Road feel the exact same way. So we are not alone here in College Park and the neighboring neighborhood associations.
Thank you, Stephanie. Tracy?
So my name is Tracy Chandler. I'm a resident. I live about a half a mile from the house. And I also note that there's a school that's also within a half a mile of the house. That's Bellarmine High School. And my question is about, so the people that are coming into this house, are some of them dealing with substance abuse and have had some interaction with the law. And I was wondering what the rules are in terms of like people that have substance abuse living within like certain distances of a school and children walking around the school. You did mention that there's a rule that people of violent crime will not be going into that house. So I'd like to know a little bit more about that. And also, I'd like to know more about the on-site monitor. Someone mentioned on-site security. Is that monitor also acting as security for the site in case there's any issues that happen? And my third question is about, are there any rules for the people who are living in the house, such as that they can't do drugs while they're in the house, or no alcohol use, or if they do get involved with the law again, do they lose their privileges? Are there like rules that they have to abide by in order to stay in the house? And my concerns are around being someone living in the community that the house is in and the people that are going to be living there.
Thanks, Tracy. To respond to your questions, and I hope that I caught them all. Regarding the house monitor, the staff who oversee the housing will in essence be acting as security. And so if something happens there, they need assistance, they will contact law enforcement. but the staff are trained in crisis de-escalation. And so if they felt that there was a situation that was unsafe, they would certainly contact law enforcement, but would make efforts to de-escalate somebody who was in crisis at the time. You'd asked a question about substance use and people with addiction living near schools, and then also what our policies are for substance use at the site. And I do not know of any laws that restrict people with addictions from living near schools. People certainly can be cited for being intoxicated in public. And so that is something that wouldn't be acceptable from our perspective for our residents to be in the neighborhood intoxicated. In regards to whether people are allowed to use or while at the site, certainly they cannot, we would not tolerate illegal activity at the site. People in formal jail diversion programs could be remanded back to custody if they violate their program agreements or their participation in the program. If somebody were to use a legal substance that intoxicated them, that wouldn't be permitted on the site. And if they returned back to the site, we would work with them to utilize something like the county's sobering station to become sober again. What we wouldn't want, unless there was no option for people's safety, what is to have somebody lose their housing because of one slip up in being intoxicated. And so we would work with them in supporting their recovery and their treatment by helping them get sober, and if they chose, returning to the house. However, that could, if they're in a formal jail diversion program, that could put their ability to continue in the program and stay out of incarceration jail at risk. We do have rules, house rules. I would say that our general approach to house rules is being trauma informed, which means that we try to be very clear about the rules and what would and would not have somebody be exited from the program. And, you know, this is a program that is designed to help people get better, to help sick people get well, and eliminate their involvement and their ongoing involvement with the justice system. So that's the goal, but also we are not just serving one people at a time. We are serving a group of people and within a community. I'm going to turn us to some questions in the chat that we haven't been able to respond to yet in writing. So Julie asked a question about our veterans. Are there 0 veterans in Santa Clara County who would choose to live at Vermont House? And Eric has agreed to answer that question.
Thank you, Hillary. So this is Eric Solivan, Director of Housing for the City of San Jose. In response to the comment as to why the site or why veterans aren't choosing the site, I want to provide context. Over the last year, as our supportive services manager for the site, who is Abode Services, they have been planning, due to a host of physical deferred maintenance needs at the site, they have been slowly depopulating the site. and applying the VASH vouchers to alternative areas. So at this time, the site has been depopulating over the last year or so to one, in anticipation of potentially selling this site, and then two, in expectation of the physical needs and the maintenance issues at the site that needed to be addressed.
Thanks, Eric. Okay. Next question. I see that Dell has a hand raised. Dell, I may have just there.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, the only thing I can have to compare this to is the Arena Hotel that's currently located on the Alameda. And is this what we're describing? Is it similar to that situation?
I'll let Eric jump in here in terms of what the current situation is at the arena, and then I can compare that to what the county would propose to you.
Okay, and in addition to that, then, I mean, I assume that the people who are running this organization are on board with what works and what doesn't work at places like the Arena Hotel, because there's a lot that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Or is this a whole separate initiative that doesn't take into consideration what's happened at other locations?
But maybe I can start, Eric, by saying that what the county is proposing for Vermont House is different than the operations at the Arena Hotel. As I understand it, the arena is operating as temporary housing in sort of shelter format, and the county, while it's operating temporary housing, it is temporary housing for people who are connected to behavioral health, outpatient treatment services, and other services afforded them as a participant in a jail diversion program. So it is temporary housing for unhoused people. We have that similarity. I'm not entirely sure of the service mix at the Arena Hotel, so I'll let Eric speak to that. But there will be a high level of services for the people who are at Vermont House.
So Hillary is correct. The Arena Hotel is a different operation and serviced population. The Arena Hotel is servicing individuals experiencing homelessness without the preference for or priority given to those who are criminally justice involved. That's not to say there aren't individuals there who have criminal justice involvement, but that is not the focal point of the population to be served. In addition, the Arena Hotel provides, through our supportive service provider at Home First, provides a comprehensive set of services intended to give the individuals at the site case management and transition them specifically to more permanent housing options. And that has been the goal for the Arena Hotel, which was originally stood up as more of a temporary landing spot. And now, as we're continuing the operations at the site, we're looking for options to better improve the social services to transition more individuals to permanent housing as we look for alternative ways to operate the site into the future.
Thanks, Eric. I don't see hands at this moment, so I'm going to keep going into the chat. Katie asked about the ratio of staff to residents. There will be I believe there will be a staff person on site 24/7. I'm seeing Sarah nod, so yes, there will be a staff person on site 24/7. And in addition to that, they are supported by 2 dedicated clinical staff members. So at a minimum, it's a 1 staff to 12 people at the location, but with additional clinical support. Eric, there's a question in the chat about the last accessibility audit of Vermont House. Do you happen to know when that was done?
I don't know at the moment when the last accessibility audit was completed. I do know that the site has challenges regarding ADA accessibility that would need to be addressed moving forward with the continuity of operations and the new populations to be served.
I see Katie's raised, and Katie, I asked you to unmute.
Hi, my name is Katie Deemer. I live across from Judy Seslin in the Alameda Park neighborhood. And I have a couple of questions, one of which you already addressed. So the question I had about the ratio, I understand there's one person there who's a staff member at all times. However, the ratio I was interested in is number of people to staff.
So we would, there would be no more than 12 people at the site.
Mm-hmm.
So on location at a time, 12 people to one staff person.
Okay, and then my next question had to do with the type of population.
Mm-hmm.
Will this group home will this transitional housing unit house sex offenders?
No, the regulations around jail diversion programs, and Gabby put a link to the penal code in the chat, don't allow placement in a diversion program, and I'll read from the code specifically, for murder or involuntary manslaughter. Any offense for which a person is convicted would be required to register pursuant to Section 290, except for a violation of Section 314. I would need to look that up, but I imagine it's on the minor end of things. Also, no rape, no lewd or lascivious acts on a child under 14, no assault with the intention to commit sexual violence, or continuous sexual abuse of a child.
Okay, and in terms of the types of offenders, my general understanding is that for diversion programs, that it can't be somebody who has multiple counts. Multiple counts is the wrong way of putting that. These are these generally, people get charged with all sorts of counts. So that was misspoken. I meant, are these first-time offenders, no matter the number of counts? Are these, my thought process is that generally diversion programs aren't open to people who are repeat recidivist offenders. But I could be wrong about that, and that's what I wanted to know.
Sure. I'm going to turn this over to Sylvia Perez McDonald. Sylvia is with our, it's an I, not alternate defender's office. She will say that better, and is an expert in this and one of our justice partners. So Sylvia, thank you for being here and for taking the question.
You're welcome. Thank you very much, Hillary. And Katie, yes, your question is a really good one. Look, the last thing we want is for the community to be to have fear for their safety. What I want to do is walk through the kind of screening and process that's going to take place, that usually takes place whenever a diversion petition is reviewed. So first, we've heard from Gabi and others that there's going to be a clinical assessment that identifies the mental health need, the role that it had in the commission of the crime. And then that assessment is reviewed by the prosecutor, the defense attorney, and then most importantly, by the judge. And we have several judges in our county who have done these treatment courts, or collaborative courts that we call them, where their goal is to screen the individuals with that safety consideration in mind. So keep in mind that a defense attorney will want, their client to have these benefits and services, but that request is not going to stay with the defense. It's going to be screened by the prosecution and the judge, whose sole responsibility is to consider the public safety issue. And so what they will look at is at the individual holistically. And most of the individuals that we're talking about are low-level offenders that commit low-level crimes, and that they're connected, the crime is connected to a mental illness or a substance abuse issue that basically is the root cause of why they're encountering the justice system. So in many ways, the goal is to address exactly the kind of concern that you have, which is the public safety, because the goal is to actually address the underlying cause so that these individuals reduce their opportunities or exposures to the justice system. And we failed so far to do that because we're not addressing the underlying crime. And please make sure that you're aware that these are not individuals that would otherwise go to prison or even qualify to be in jail. These are individuals that, under the statutes and the law, qualify to remain out in the community. What we're going to try to do here is, and what the county's finally fulfilling, is this responsibility to now provide services to these individuals. And the critical service provided is the housing component, so that we get individuals that are in one place with the safety consideration, with the provider, with the case management, so that they have some oversight over their treatment and their care. And so I do realize, and I see in the chat, the concerns about safety and the type of crime, et cetera. But please be aware that these are individuals that qualify to be out there in the community anyway. We're just putting them in a safe, habitable environment so that they can be more receptive to the treatment that the county is willing to provide to them.
Thank you. Thank you, Sylvia.
If I could ask a follow-up to that, I understand that you're telling me that these people all would qualify to be out in the community. So just to be clear about this, I'm an attorney. I do complex commercial litigation, but I started my career as a public defender. So I understand about diversion programs. And so what I'm trying to ask you, I guess your response makes me curious or question. Are they all misdemeanor?
Yes, most of them are misdemeanors or low-level felonies.
Okay.
These are not serious. So, and as you know, as a public defender, former public defender, and as a person responsible for the well-being of the justice system, this solution is what the justice system's people, what we've been asking for and pleading for years. It's the solution that we've wanted for years, because without it, we are criminalizing mental health. We're not getting to the root cause. We're not getting individuals that need the care. And the housing issue is a revolving door. It's the lack of housing creates the exposure to the crime. The lack of housing then creates the instability. And then without the appropriate housing, we cannot create stability. We cannot provide the care, and we cannot reduce this endless cycle that we keep bringing individuals with mental illness into the jails. And the law has changed for that. Our legislature has spoken, and they are emphasizing the need for diverting people away from penal institutions and the criminal punishment exclusively. Accountability still exists, but now we want to add care so that we actually achieve better public safety outcomes, which we're failing to do without these types of services.
Thank you, Sylvia. We're just about at the end of our time. So if anyone wants to ask a final question, please raise your hand now. I see Judy and I see Dell. Call on you in just a moment. And then if you've posted your question in the chat and we're not able to answer it, and Gabby and Sarah have done a great job answering questions in the chat. If we haven't been able to answer it, we will add those to the FAQs that we'll post tomorrow. So I see just Judy and Dell with their hands raised. Those will be our two final comments or questions. Judy? I've asked you to unmute.
Hi. So I'd like to ask about sort of a glimpse of the day in the life of a resident at this facility. Can you talk about meals? When would they be given access to job resources, like frequency, mental health counseling frequency, practical life support for, services like banking or other things that are just come with being a living human being, transportation support. So what does it look like for someone living at this facility? What are the wraparound services? And then I'd also like to ask, how do you plan to involve us, the neighbors, in this community, in this venture? Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Judy. Sarah, I'm going to ask you to answer Judy's question about the practical stuff. And then if you want to start answering the community question, and I'll take it from you when you're ready.
Sure, absolutely. So as I had mentioned in one of the responses in the chat, we do have a full division that is supporting our forensic population in our programs. So we have around 600 clients across our forensic programs in Santa Clara County, our justice involved diversion clients. And we have over 50 staff that are supporting those clients. So we have, let's say there are 12 individuals placed at Vermont House. All of those clients are going to be receiving services. So they will have groups that are taking place on site, whether those are rehabilitation skill building type groups, or whether those are therapeutic groups, or whether those are substance abuse support groups, whatever those might be appropriate for the population. We also have case managers or rehabilitation counselors that are assigned to all clients, and they are doing a lot of that day-to-day skill building and resource linkage that you're talking about. That is the bulk of their job. They are going to be training them on vocational skills, working with them on a resume, getting them connected to the different community resources, making sure that their Medi-Cal insurance is activated, making sure they have an ID. We have a whole phases of treatment that all of our clients go through, which includes making sure that they've followed up on all of these basics as they're transitioning out of our jail system. So they do have a checklist that they need to work through, including participating in therapy, making sure all these pieces are in place. And it might be surprising to hear, but we do actually have a lot of residents that are working as well. And so when you're talking about a day in the life, a lot of the time it's just like anyone else's day. They're getting up, they're making their own meals. We don't make meals for them. They are independently really living in these homes. So then we provide food for them to make meals with, working with our different community resources, but they'll make their breakfast, they might be heading out to work, or they might be participating in a support group, they might be going with their rehab counselor to apply for jobs. They'll be doing that sort of thing throughout the day. Coming back to the house, they'll be doing their, whatever sort of chore type things, or supporting the house setting, making sure that everything is clean and kind of following those expectations. They'll be cooking dinner that might be happening together, might be happening independently based on schedules. And so what that looks like is really just going to depend on where the client is in their phases of treatment. If they're really early, they might be getting quite a few services per week where we're out there supporting them in the home. They might come into our office, they'll receive psychiatry services if appropriate. Again, the individual therapy, the group sessions, and then a lot of that work with the rehab counselor. They take them out in the community and really getting them connected. But ultimately, our goal is that all of our clients are establishing, their own source of income, that they are meeting all of these sort of activities of daily living, getting a job, getting on their feet, and really able to transition. It is transitional housing. It is short term. We expect them to not be there really more than 6 months. So we are looking that our job is to really work through our phases of treatment with them. But again, we really have a large team that is supporting them. I know someone asked, it's a small house, and this because it's just one microcosm of our entire division and services that we're providing. So our structures are for a much larger division, and these clients are receiving it while they happen to live there. Otherwise, we have them placed in different sober living environments, independent living placements, or just apartments, or with family in all sorts of settings. And so reality is that these are individuals who are living everywhere in the community, and this is just one of the settings where we can collectively support them, which is nice for our staff because they can go and see several different clients at once. But there really is a large system of support in place.
Thanks, Sarah. And Judy, to answer your question about future community involvement, if the county does own Vermont House, one of the things we'll be doing is having regular community advisory committee meetings so that we can engage with you all about what's happening at Vermont House. You know, one of the other sites that I worked on setting up the neighborhood was also started to work with doing activities with the population there. So inviting them on a neighborhood walk to get to know the neighborhood, or you know, inviting the people to a block party or coming to the site to throw an event for a holiday. So I think that there are many opportunities for people to get involved with each other in the community, and for us as the county and our on-site operator to be involved with each other as well. Del.
Yes, the previous speaker pretty much spoke to a lot of my question, which had to do with what are the measures of success? So you have clients who are suffering mental illness and have committed low-level misdemeanors and felonies, and they're working some kind of program with their resources. And then what does a successful exit look like? Do they actually get jobs? And do we track these graduates after 6 months, a year, 2 years? I mean, and what's the level of, I don't know, recidivism or, you know, relapse, I guess, in this case? Because, you know, I just think that, you know, the types of jobs that are available for these type of potential employees are probably low paying. The average rent for an apartment is $3,000. So where do these people exit to? Is it mostly family? Is it how do we measure success in this program?
Gabby, do you want to take that one, or do you want Sarah to?
Yeah, thank you. So, they've committed all their legal requirements. They fulfilled their legal requirements. There's no reason to supervise them. They are Medi-Cal beneficiaries, so we avail other resources and opportunities within behavioral health for them. We do have what's called an aftercare program. Maybe they don't really need to be with us, but we still monitor them 6 months to a year to track them closely. You know, is there anything that they still need to continue to be stable? We do warm hands off. We will transition them to another service provider, ensure that the service provider knows, you know, what ongoing care they've had. You know, if it's somebody that we really are concerned about, we'll case conference to ensure that they're staying within the treatment provider. So we put a lot of measures in place to make sure that people stay connected. Once they fulfill their treatment goals, we ask them, what other opportunities can we avail to you? Many of our participants come back and they work in treatment. You know, something clicked for them, something was meaningful. So we have what's called peer support, which is a position, county benefits, higher pay, or they work within our you know, providers. So we do employ many people in various different parts of our system, not just behavioral health, probation employees, peers, pretrials looking at peers, our court system. So we try to work with people as much as we can to ensure that they have that smooth transition and warm handoff to whatever, you know, their next life goal is. So we really try to keep people, stabilize them, make sure that they're safely integrating into community, making good choices, making sure if they have any legal commitments, they fulfilled them. We also have what's called a client status report, where we have to report to the court how people are doing, their attorneys, if anybody's supervising them. So a lot goes into ensuring that we keep people stable and they reintegrate safely into community. And should someone need to come back, There is check-in, there is communication, and what we want to prevent is people coming back to the system. So we try to set up as many checks and balances so that people can safely stay in community by ensuring that they follow their treatment plans. And there's constant and ongoing communication. Should they be with another provider, there's what's called a release of information. So there's that transparency and communication with that individual.
Thanks, Gabby.
Yeah.
I have put the link to our webpage where responses to FAQs will be available tomorrow. Also my email address in the chat if you have additional questions. And before we say goodnight to you all, I'd like to turn it over to John Pelisso, who would like to say a few words on behalf of Supervisor Chavez.
Thank you so much, Hillary, and just wanted to let everyone know, I think you noticed Supervisor Chavez was on the call here until a few moments ago. She had to take a couple more calls, but we're absolutely committed to staying engaged with the community. Feel free to reach out to our office if there's any ongoing concerns. Happy to meet with anybody related to the Vermont House. As well, we'll be preparing a package of information for leadership that's coming through so that there's continuity and there's attention paid to the Vermont House and the community. And again, feel free to reach out. I'll put all my contact information in the chat as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John. And again, thank you everyone for attending tonight and for the great discussion and respectful engagement. And we look forward to speaking with you again soon. Thank you.